Hello, BookTube, and welcome back to Epic Comic Book Wednesday. This is a collaboration between the forces of Stately Vaughan Manor and Hyde Cottage, where Michael K Vaughan and I discuss the comic books on which we have wasted our youths. It started out as a feature on his channel, where he was talking about Marvel's Epic collection of reprints, hence the title. And I horned my way in and said, I want to do this. And as a result of that, he gets to pick what we do every week, which has long since evolved beyond simply the Epic collection line. Although, many of you have pointed out, there is at least one, sometimes two, Epic collections that come out every single Wednesday in the comic shops. If Michael and I wanted to, we could stick to Epic collections and never run out of them, because Marvel is really behind their reprint line, unlike DC Comics. But we are picking a DC comic for today. We're not doing an Epic collection. Instead, we're doing a gem from the 1970s. It's this. It's Superman versus Muhammad Ali. This was an oversized comic book. You can see the price there was $2.50. This was an oversized comic book in the late 1970s in which Denny O'Neil came up with a basic plot that would somehow allow Superman to fight the most famous boxer in the world at the time. Although I don't think Ali at the time, at the exact moment when this thing came out, I don't think he was at that moment heavyweight champion of the world. But it didn't matter. It was well known to be a better boxer than anyone alive, including by his own admission, as we'll get to. And I don't know if you're going to be able to make it out here, but that crowd, the reason that they all look distinctive is because the crowd is absolutely full of real people, of real celebrities from the 1970s. Like, for instance, if you zoom in on these two pretty young people right here, that's Donnie and Marie, Donnie and Marie Osmond. Who had a very high-rated TV show. The smirk down in the corner there is Kurt Vonnegut. And of course, most famously, let's see if we can give him his due. This comic has a few double-page spreads, which are the devil's own mischief when you're trying to navigate on a screen. But that smile right down there is the President Jimmy Carter, who miraculously is still alive at almost 100 years old. And this is a story about an alien race that comes to Earth with a menacing armada. They are the Scrub. The race is called the Scrub. And much like TLC, I don't want no scrub hanging out the passenger side of his best friend's ride, trying to holler at me. I don't want them. They are thoroughly unlikable. Superman doesn't want them either. They come to Earth right as Clark Kent is meeting Muhammad Ali. So there we get our two protagonists. And Neil Adams draws a lot of his artwork from newspaper articles, magazine articles, so that there's a lot of verisimilitude in his version of Muhammad Ali. Unlike, for instance, Kurt Swan's version of Richard Pryor in the comic book version of Superman 4, which is best left not even mentioned. But we start with a gigantic 2-page spread, which again is going to be a little difficult to do here. I'll give it a try. There is the 2-page spread that starts this issue, where our trio of heroes, Superman, Lois Lane, and Jimmy Olsen, are way in the background. So that we can get this gigantic shot of what was then the inner city. And I don't know, there's so many details here that are completely realistic to the time that I think you might miss. Like, for instance, the Michael points out in his video, I'll leave a link to his video down below, he points out the TV antennas up on the tops of buildings because we had no internet, but also the elevated. Right? The L is right there. Those tracks, if there might be a tiny section of New York City where they still exist, but they used to be an absolutely commonplace site where the subway was elevated above the street like that. And also the 1970s prices. You have melons here that are 3 for $1, where they are individually $4.50 now. And you've got the garbage and the tacky billboards and the graffiti and whatnot. You've got a bum just sort of hanging out on the sidewalk there. It's a very different scene than anything you would see in the intensely gentrified same area today. But this has Neil Adams' artwork, and Neil Adams is, in the most part, trying to be domesticated. He is trying to do a graphic novel rather than do any of the kinds of visual stylistic excesses for which he later became known. And when the alien shows up, the scrub shows up, he explains his reason for being there to Muhammad Ali. He says, we pride ourselves on our warriors' valor and ability, and we admire them in others, even when they are turned against us. The fierceness of you Earthmen has not escaped our notice, nor your potential for destruction. On our homeworld, we know you to be the galaxy's most warlike and savage people, as we are in our galaxy. And this too we know, of Earth warriors, you, Muhammad Ali, are one of the best. It's at this point that Superman rejoins the story. Clark Kent has disappeared to change into Superman. But before he joins his friends, he says to himself, well, this one alien would not have the guts to show up alone. He must have backup. And he flies into space. And when I read this, I thought, no, absolutely not. This alien has already struck Lois Lane to the ground. Superman would not fly off into space. He would immediately, he struck Lois Lane in front of him. He would not fly off into space to verify whether or not there's some sort of armada there. He would take care of the immediate threat first. But it's not the only no moment for Superman in this graphic novel. He flies into space and sees there is, in fact, a gigantic armada. Look at how lovely that is. I tell you, Neil Adams can do no wrong. He discovers that there is an armada in space, and he comes back to threaten the alien. Now, the alien is... The writing here doesn't survive much scrutiny. You want to pick a fight. You want to leave your galaxy, come to another galaxy to pick a fight. But the idea is that their chosen champion will fight the chosen champion of Earth. And there's a little bit of a disagreement because Muhammad Ali says, I'm the greatest. And Superman says, well, if anyone's going to mix it up with these extraterrestrial clowns, it should be me. You may be the best human scrapper, but I'm superhuman. And Ali points out to him, well, you're superhuman, but you're not from Earth. So you shouldn't be standing for us. Superman actually has to tell him, come on, I'm a naturalized Earthman. I've been granted citizenship in every nation in the UN. And Muhammad Ali has to point out to him, why are we arguing when he's the bad guy? Which is a note that's struck throughout this graphic novel is that Ali is wonderfully portrayed. He loved when he was talking to the press. If he was in the right mood, and he often was, he loved to present himself as a caricature, as a cartoon character. He loved to do that. It gave him a great deal of joy to play around with reporters that way. Most of the reporters who covered him most of them knew that it was a joke. They knew that it was a bit, that it was a routine. And most of them wrote at the time, throughout his entire career, he couldn't get away with that if he couldn't do miracles in the ring. But he can. So he can. And it's very refreshing that Neil Adams and Denny O'Neil don't give us the caricature, even Ali's own character, if you know what I mean. They give us someone who is very much a real person, which is really neat. He's actually the best drawn character in the book, even though it's a Superman comic book. The aliens decide to demonstrate their horrible authority by launching a missile at St. Louis, and for some odd reason, Superman is desperate to stop it from hitting. Not really sure why. Maybe he's never been to St. Louis. We get this great moment where he rams his fists together to create a massive tidal wave that will to create a shockwave that will dissipate the tidal wave. See, so we get this great Neil Adams panel where he is preparing to do that. That is just awesome. I was so impressed by that I didn't really think about the physics involved in that, and it's best that you don't. To put it mildly, a shockwave that could dissipate a tidal wave that size could not come from an object as small as Superman, and if it could, it would do a whole lot more damage to St. Louis than the shockwave did, or anything else. But then there's I showed you that opening panel, massive 2-page spread. In his video, Michael points out very correctly that in these spreads, Neil Adams is really making the most of every inch of the space that he has. And Michael holds up a later paperback reprint in a more or less standard paperback size that doesn't do it justice. And I have to admit, even digitally, where you can zoom in, again, it doesn't really do it justice. You can zoom in on the details here, But better by far to have that big, oversized thing right in front of you. Michael makes a note in his video that he spread it out on the floor when he was a kid and read it over and over again. And that gave me a little pang because I did the exact same thing 25 years later when I was a kid. I spread it out on the floor because I thought that was the best possible way to read it. And also in the late 1970s, I was also briefly enamored of something that we used to do then, which was to take a ball of Play-Doh, press it onto a color, the funnies on Sunday or a comic book, and then you would have the image on the Play-Doh when you pulled it off. That fad didn't last long, but I was doing that for panel after panel of this exercise thing, and I spread it out on the floor to do that. And if you've been watching this channel, you can already finish this anecdote. My beagles destroyed it. It was on the floor. It was in their territory, so they one day just destroyed it. And to add insult to injury, the group of beagles that I had at the time included one, Moro, who had been born blind. He still visited 31 countries with me. He never knew that he was blind, so to speak. His brothers took good care of him. I took good care of him. We made sure he never stumbled, never fell down any stairs, always knew where everything was. We made sure of that. So it was a real priority of mine that Moro never suffer from the fact that he didn't have any eyes. But the insult to injury moment was when my boys were destroying this thing, and once I saw that they'd already taken care of 5 pages, it wasn't like I was going to dive in and say, no! So I had to just stand there while 2 of my boys ripped out one of the pages of Muhammad Ali versus Superman and brought it over to Moro so that he could destroy it. He didn't know where it was. They had to hand it to him so that he could destroy it, so he could have some of the fun. And I never replaced that. God knows if this thing is expensive now. Sometimes Michael and I will talk about something only later to realize that the original copy is expensive. That sometimes happens even with omnibus or collected editions that are just a few years old. The collector's market is weird. It's really weird. It's always a source of sort of sotto voce relief to me that Michael himself, like me, is an ardent aficionado. He will definitely go online to find something that he remembers loving and that he wants to own. But he's not a collector in that sense, in the sense of watching those up and down values. I'm very happy about that because I'm not either. But they... anyway, to get back to the graphic novel, the dispute here is, well, there's some dispute as to who is going to represent you in the ring against the scrub hanging out the passenger side of their best friend's ride, trying to holler at me. So first they have to sort of duke it out themselves. They have to figure out who's going to represent Earth. And that raises a question, because the contest is going to be done under a red sun where Superman's superpowers will be largely gone. Again, I had my issues with that. The 1-2 punch of Superman's powers forever and ever, for decades, was always really weird to me. Writers knew that it was gravity, but they also knew that it was solar radiation, and they couldn't really make up their minds which it was. If you subject Superman to red sun radiation, does he lose all his powers, even his physical strength, which you'd think would be a product of gravity, of density? One way or another, the idea here is that Superman will be fighting without his superpowers, and that raises the awkward question of, well, he doesn't know how to fight. He doesn't know how to fight without his superpowers. It's only after this, in the later 1970s and the early 1980s, that it starts to become really obvious, especially in the pages of World's Finest, which Michael and I will be getting to eventually, that Batman, the world's foremost unarmed combat expert, is teaching his best friend Superman how to fight without superpowers. But at this point, no. So Muhammad Ali has to train him. And for that, they repair to the Fortress of Solitude. Look at those details. Just incredible. Neil Adams always has the right idea for a panel. Here, where the camera angle, so to speak, is right here. It's right below the center line, so that we're looking up at this awe-inspiring place, which is just awesome. Just an amazing. It's just one panel, but it's amazing. And they decide to... Superman decides to have Muhammad Ali train him. And we get this interesting montage where Ali is, talking about boxing and how it's not just slugging away. Superman actually says, I confess, I never realized there was so much to ringmanship. It's more than adding fist to face. And Ali says a lot more. It's the sweet science, and I'm the professor. And they go to some extra dimensional boxing ring to sort of spar with each other, but the scrub don't like the delay and immediately hustle them to the arena, uh, where they meet the scrub's champion, Hunya, who is gigantic. He's 10 feet tall. We're told he's made in a laboratory. He's impervious to harm. He's got an armored skin, so very difficult for Superman to take without his superpowers. And you would think a foregone, if you're wondering, yes, the scrub is wearing bell bottoms, but a foregone conclusion that Muhammad Ali can't take the thing. And there's a wonderful bit here that is done just a bit. The main representative of the scrub is a screamer. He's a very tense guy, and Superman and Muhammad Ali. There's a wonderful little comic bit where they like just egging him on. Where when the scrub representative is talking about how impressive Hunya is, Ali makes a gesture of yawning, and Superman plays right along with him. He says, "You impressed, Soups?" And he says, "By what?" And the alien cannot stand this. He yells, "Insolence, insolence, insolence!" And once they know that they're getting his goat by doing that, they keep doing it. They see in this panel there, "You as bored as I am, Soups? Couldn't be more so." Or this when Ali tickles the chin of Hunya and says, "I think he's cute." And the guy yells, "Insolence!" And that's really neat. That's a really neat moment. But this is going to be a massively popular tournament. I guess because the Scrub are a terror in their own galaxy. I guess I don't really know, but again, we get a massively detailed, beautiful Neal Adams panel. I want to see if I can do it justice. Look at that! How beautiful that is! Just the detail of these aliens. You've even got reflections in the eyeballs. Just amazing work. Amazing work. And we get a little row of panels at the bottom there showing the galaxy watching, including my guy Adam Strange. So I guess he knows about the Scrub and doesn't bother to, he's not going to try and help Superman, but they go to this alien arena, and Perry White, I guess, is a coach for Superman, but Lois Lane and Jimmy Olsen come in order to broadcast to the rest of the world, which is kind of an odd choice because Neal Adams goes out of his way to show us that Howard Cosell is in fact there. Again, those of you who were born in the 21st century will have no idea of associating Howard Cosell with Muhammad Ali, but Cosell and Ali had a great relationship. Cosell also had a non-athletic but still very much artificial constructed person that he presented to the outside world. They recognized that in each other right away, and it was often quite good to watch them together. But Cosell is not the speaker here. Instead, it's Jimmy Olsen. Look at these aliens, though. Look at this big tentacle thing here, and here we've got aliens that are melted in goo, and this audience full of weird creatures. Just wonderful. And there's a fight. Now, keep in mind, this is under a red sun, so Superman has no superpowers, and also their training session did not have a chance to happen. So Superman doesn't know what he's doing either. So picture as if you put on boxing gloves and faced Muhammad Ali at age 32, at the peak of his powers. It's just as hopeless as that. Superman doesn't have a single chance. And the fight goes on until Superman is knocked unconscious. And Michael K. Vaughan points out that the great panel that Neal Adams gives us to show that really struck him as a small child, because it is really good. It's an unconscious, pummeled Superman being hustled on a stretcher out of the ring, and it was a standout moment at the time. When I was reading this, I thought, okay, well, you've already stipulated that it's a red sun, so he doesn't have superpowers. And also, by this point in the graphic novel, I was strongly suspecting that something's going on. I was strongly suspecting that there's something a little odd here, and that maybe this is furtherance of the plot, which wouldn't happen if Neal Adams had written this alone. But Denny O'Neil is a very practiced, gimmicky writer who was right with him the whole time. And so, Superman out of the picture, it's Muhammad Ali who will face Hunya in the ring, even though it seems utterly hopeless. It seems impossible that he could beat this 10-foot tall, green, armored monster made in a laboratory. And they're about to go at it when a weird item happens. This, I would be willing to bet, was a Neil Adams creation. For some reason, Pallas Athena shows up in the ring. A glowing goddess shows up in the ring. She says that she's Pallas Athena to humans, but that she's a goddess to many of these people. And for some reason, she wants to watch the fight, which is kind of strange. It's really, really kind of strange. See, Perry White says, "Great Caesar's ghost," and she says, "No ghost, Perry White, nor Caesar, though I did observe the various Caesars of years gone by," as she introduces herself as Pallas Athena. Which is really kind of weird. And she telepathically beams the rules of the fight into the minds of both contestants. To which Ali says, "That's fine, goddess, but not too much at once, because that turkey over there, he ain't none too bright." And the head scrub says, "Unfair!" And she says, "No, the use of psychology in warfare is a universally accepted tactic." And that is one of many nods in this graphic novel to what Ali always did. There's a long sequence where he does it in this issue, where he just rants against his opponent, designed to sap his opponent's confidence. Where he says, "Not only I am the greatest, but that you are a loser, that there's no chance you're going to win." And Ali mentions at one point in this graphic novel, he tells Superman that working to beat your opponent happens long before you get in the ring. And Ali often did that. And it's amazing. He even did it in the ring. He incorporated it into his fighting style. The minute he realized that his skills, his speed especially, but also his strength, his reflexes, eclipsed his opponent, even if his opponent was world famous and very high ranked, the minute he realized that in the ring, most boxers would have realized, all right, I outclassed this guy, so I'm gonna take him to the cleaners. And Ali almost never did that. Instead, in the ring, if he noticed that he outclassed his opponent, he very much wanted his opponent to know that. He would dance around. He would dodge, sometimes elaborately, sometimes 6 or 7 punches in a row, without ever trying to land one of his own, just to bring home not only to his opponent but to everyone watching that this is a full-grown adult versus a clumsy child. I could do this. I could win this at any moment. That is as much psychological as it is physical. And Ali was famous for it. He's the greatest practitioner of that particular aspect of what people call the sweet science. While he's fighting this monster, this Hanya, he doesn't have a chance. But while he's doing that, Superman is scheming behind the scenes in order to send away, get most of this alien armada, which is the real threat, get most of the alien armada to go home and somehow deal with the rest of it. And at one point, he's running to a hangar bay in order to get out and see the effects of his plan, when he tries to fly and falls because he's forgotten that he's under a red sun and he doesn't have superpowers. And he says, "I almost killed myself. A lifetime of having superpowers has ruined me for this sort of thing." Really kind of amazing. But we cut back to the fight where Ali is losing. Obviously, he's got a 10-foot tall, green, armored opponent, and the scrub says, "Obviously, you are about to be beaten senseless. Therefore, according to the terms of our agreement, missiles will rain on Earth. But I have an alternative." He says, "I have an alternative. If your governments agree to deed the peoples of Earth to us as slaves, we will spare them." And Ali says, "Slaves? Everyone? No. There's another choice, sucker. I can whoop them." And that's what happens. You just know that is going to be a feel-good moment. That Ali is somehow going to just, through sheer grit, beat his opponent. While look at this. I wish I could do it justice. Look at how beautiful this is. An alien armada scene. That is just gorgeous. That we break to the alien armada, where once Superman leaves the red sun radiation, he has his powers back. Look at that. And here we get to another moment that deeply bothered the negative 25-year-old Steve, who read this 25 years before he was in utero. Because Superman is looking at the fleet. He's chasing the fleet, which he has sent away. He has tricked them away from the fight. He knows they're still the main problem, and he's looking at them, and he says something that is absolute heresy. Either my X-ray and telescopic visions are tricking me, or the combined power of that fleet is greater than my own. If your telescopic and X-ray vision are telling you that the combined power of a technological fleet of spaceships is greater than Superman, then they are tricking you. I saw that, and when I read that the first time, I thought, what on earth? Was this some sort of alternate universe? Superman can't handle a fleet of spaceships? Are you crazy? And it turns out that he can't. They blast him with their little ray guns. He's invulnerable. Okay? Do we know what invulnerable means? Do we need to go over it? It means he's not vulnerable. It means he's not vulnerable to your stupid little weapons. But he decides to fly at super speed through their various engine rooms. And he's yelling in space. He's yelling, yeah! Where the sententious little dialogue boxes actually go to the bother of telling us that technically there's no sound in space, but you're not supposed to leave that out. As he flies through each of the engine rooms of the ships. But it exhausts him, the poor little daffodil, and they also turn their weapons on him. And it's absurd. It's absolutely absurd. He's Superman. What kind of weapon is going to affect him? He's invulnerable. But the combination of him and Ali in the ring works perfectly. I don't know if that was Neil Adams or if that was Denny O'Neil, but it works perfectly. This was 10 times more enjoyable to revisit than I thought it was going to be. Sometimes, I swear, Michael makes some of his picks specifically to get a groan out of me, but in this case, I liked this when I first had it. It has a little bit of traumatic association for me because I watched it get destroyed, and it was $2.50, which was a lot of money at the time. But I liked it a lot more this time. Just a terrific adventure story in which everyone works out right, in which everyone is in character and works out right. Not only Superman, but Muhammad Ali, who is never made as a character. He's never made as a super creature on his own. And it just reminded me, I'm not going to rant about this, I promise. I'm not going to dwell on it. At the end, Ali and Superman decide that they are both the greatest. And when I read that, I was grinning from ear to ear when I finished with this. When I read that, I thought immediately that nothing even remotely like this could happen in today's comic books. Not even remotely. The absolute sine qua non in DC Comics, especially Marvel Comics, but also DC Comics, if you were to do an equivalent of this, would be over and over again, repeated. It would probably happen 4 times in the course of an oversized issue, that Superman is racist. That everyone who's not black is racist in the comic. That would be said specifically. And there would be, the door would be left wide open that if you're a white comic book reader, you are also racist. Nothing like that happens in this comic. Nothing at all. Instead, the closest we get is Hanya, it turns out, has ideas of his own. He thinks that the leader of the Scrubs is crazy. And at the end of the story, Lois Lane says, so you're saying that the thing that won the day was fair play? And Muhammad Ali says, yeah, fair play. And if everybody, my people and all people, had more of that, the whole world would be a lot better place. That's the closest that we come to the kind of explicitly, fashionably racist lecturing and profiling that would happen if this were done today. If this were done today, I absolutely would not go anywhere near it. It would be a rare instance for an Epic Comic Book Wednesday where I just don't want to participate. But it wouldn't be done. The idea now has the racial discourse, discourse on the subject of race, especially in America, has shifted so far into coarse dichotomies that it wouldn't be possible to do a thing like this. And I'm also sure that any of the Twitter blue check marks who might someday accidentally read this thing would say that this graphic novel itself is racist. I promise I'm not. I'll leave the subject right there and just say this was a blast from the past. It was wonderful fun to encounter this all over again. That was just fantastic. So who knows what we'll do next week? I know some of you really you look forward to Michael and I disagreeing with each other, but in this case, no, not at all. I would never have in a million years have thought to revisit this. But I'm glad I did. I'm so glad that I did. Michael in his video says this is some of Neil Adams' best work ever in a comic book. And I think he's right. I don't think that's hyperbole. The Armada scenes, the crowd scenes in this, they're amazing. Absolutely amazing. Even the cover itself, all of those celebrities look like themselves. Cher looks like Cher 10 facial reconstructions ago. That's no small thing right there. Even though, in his heyday, Neil Adams had sort of a flair for large numbers of people on comic book covers. But anyway, that's quite enough about Muhammad Ali versus Superman. Blast from the past. How wonderful. So I'll wrap this up for now, and we'll see you all next week. Thank you, Booktube.